Do you have a definition for crisis? Like, what is a crisis?
It's a gift. It's a gift. Everything is. It's interesting you mentioned The Power of Intention, because I wrote that book in what you would call a crisis. My wife and I had separated. I was 60 years old. You don't break up when you're 60 and have 7 kids. You know, you do that in junior high school. And for about a year and a half, I was in the closest thing I've ever had to a depression, a clinical depression. Didn't want to get up, just couldn't figure it out. My wife had met somebody else, had moved in with them and so on. And my children encouraged me to just start writing again. They said, if you just write about it. And I really didn't want to write about it. But I had lost a lot of weight. People thought I was sick. People thought I was dying, and so on. And that book was just channeled to me. And I think in moments of crisis, what it teaches us is to become more compassionate. And compassion is at the heart of higher consciousness and enlightenment. The Dalai Lama said that if we could take every child on the planet and have them meditate on compassion for 1 hour a week, every child at the age of 5, in one generation we could eliminate all violence on earth. So that's how powerful he believes compassion to be. And I understood that, because The Power of Intention was a major shift for me. I began to look less flippantly and less egotistically at the world, and came from a place of inner grace or kindness, gentleness, love, what I call divine love. So that I've always felt that it is not always so important to just be in a state of gratitude when things go well, and when you're around people that smell good and that make you feel good and that look good, but it's the low points in our life, reminders that there's something inside of us that wants to have an outpouring of love. See, even the miser who loves his gold doesn't really love his gold because of the gold. The gold is just another thing. It doesn't have any love in it. It's just an object, a metal object. The reason that the miser loves his gold is because of the outpouring of love that he has for the gold. And that's true of everything and everyone. It's learning to have this outpouring of love, and you don't just have to have it for people and events, but you can have it for this microphone, and you can have it for the cameras, and you can have it for the wall, and the table, and the chair, and everything that you encounter. And I think for me, probably one of what you would call a crisis in my life was a diagnosis of leukemia 3 years ago. And when I first heard that word leukemia has cancer all around it. Cancer has a lot of fear all around it. And even if you aren't afraid to die, which I'm not, there's no point in being afraid of that. There's no point in being afraid of anything. You still, there's that inbred sort of psychic kind of awareness that cancer and fear go together, And so it was, it turned out to be one of the great blessings in my life. I encountered John of God down in Brazil, and was able to have just a magical experience around it. But what happened is, when I had this healing and leukemia was taken out of my body, it wasn't so much that leukemia was taken out. What was taken out was fear, and it was replaced by love. Almost immediately, not almost, immediately after I had what they call the removal of the sutures, a week after the surgery, this remote surgery, I started feeling just love for everyone. I walked out of the room that morning, 7 days after the surgery, and I looked at my children and I just put my arms around them. I said, "You've just never looked more beautiful." And I looked at the ocean, and it looked like just a big bowl of love soup. And the trees looked fluorescent, and every person that I walked by and looked at just became just objects of love. this idea of not dying with your music still in you is really about an awareness that there is some kind of purpose. And that purpose to everything and to your life is not necessarily based upon something that we can figure out with our brain. Like, my purpose is to become an accountant, or my purpose is to find the perfect place to live or the perfect mate. I don't think it's done that way. It's never, to me, an intellectual thing. It's always something that's of the heart. When I ask people to point to themselves, they never point to their brain. They always point to their heart. And Gibran, the Lebanese poet, said that when you're born, your work is placed in your heart. There's something that you feel, and it's very hard to put it into words. In fact, I think it defies words, because words are just more symbols of something that we're trying to express. And it's the feeling that we have in here that I'm here, that I have a heroic mission of some kind, that there's something more to my life than just simply going through the motions and being a commuter and collecting a certain amount of stuff. So to me, not dying with your music still in you is what Maslow called the top of the pyramid. And you remember the pyramid of the self-actualization that begins with the baseline being the longest part, but the baseline is just taking care of basic needs. Like, you learn how to handle and provide for yourself. So you have to, at the very base of this pyramid, you have to feed yourself. And you have to have your needs for water, and your needs for food, and your needs for shelter as you move up this. And then your needs for sort of like companionship and ultimately a need to feel a sense of belonging, a need to feel loved as you begin to move up this pyramid until you get to the very top. And at the very top of this pyramid, there's just a tiny little space up there. And this tiny little space at the top of the pyramid is what we call purpose, where you're living your life as if why you're here is really clear to you. A sense of purpose is not that I'm doing what I was told I was supposed to do, that was programmed into me by somebody in the sky before I showed up here, but that I feel as if why I'm here is being actualized. And when people ask me about how do I get to that place of purpose in my life, I always remind them that your life is like what Joel Goldsmith called it, a parenthesis in eternity. So who you are, Carl Jung referred over and over again to the part of us that is eternal, the infinite part of us. He said the telling question of a person's life is their relationship to the infinite. And until you have that relationship with the infinite, you will not know anything about purpose. So that you almost have to learn how to step outside of yourself and begin to witness yourself from the perspective of who you are as not being this thing that you're observing. You go to the observer, and then you even get to watch the observer. And that's when it starts to get a little bit complicated. But as the observer, or as the witness to the observer, you're sort of watching and noticing. But the sense of purpose comes from being that witness rather than what you are witnessing. And when you get to that place in your life, you begin to realize that who you are in this physical world, this name that you've been given and this body that you are occupying, is nothing more than a parenthesis in something called eternity. It opens parentheses at the moment of your conception. It closes parentheses at the moment of your death. But when you come into this parentheses, when you show up here, you show up with nothing, with no thing. And you go from nowhere, Nowhere, nowhere. And in one instant, conception, you're in now here, Nowhere. It's all the same. It's just a little question of spacing. Nowhere, now here. So now you're in now here. Hopefully, all of you listening are in now here. There may be some of you listening that are not now here. But while you're in now here, you have some kind of an awareness that you're going nowhere. You're going back to nowhere. So it's nowhere, open parentheses, now here, back to nowhere. It's all one. But there's something different about now here than nowhere. At least we think there is, but we don't have any real confirmation about that unless you're Brian Weiss. Or you know about past lives or future lives and so on. Now, one of the things that one of the great teachers in my life, Carlos Castaneda, whom I've referred to on many occasions, one of the things that he says is that the problem with humanity living at ordinary levels of awareness is that we are all beings who are going to die, but we act as if we're not, so that we don't really ever come in contact with our immortality or our infinity at all, because we are acting as if this body is all that there is and it's going to live forever, when in fact there's an awareness in there that we're all going nowhere.
I tell people, supposing you went to sleep and you had a dream, and in your dream you had all these different characters, and you had all of this money, and you had everything that you wanted in your dream. And then you woke up, and then you look back at your dream, and you became attached to the stuff that you had in your dream. And you said, wait a minute, I want that. There was gold in there. There was silver. There was all of these friends. I had a Ferrari there. I mean, all of this. I got to have that. Somebody would come away and cart you off and put you in a rubber room and say, that was a dream. You can't be attached to that. That's just a thought that you have. That's the way you got to view life. Instead of it being an 8-hour dream, it's an 80-year dream or a 90-year dream. And at the end of the dream, you don't want to be looking back at all of the stuff that you wish you could still have, because you can't have it. You don't get any of that. So you try to detach yourself now, while you're here, while you're alive, from the need to have that stuff. Instead, you just let it sort of all flow. As absurd as it would be for you to be attached to the stuff that you had in your dream, it's that absurd for you to be attached to the stuff that you're having in this dream. You have to die while you're alive. Now, that's a very hard concept for people to get. But you have to experience your own death while you're alive. Let me tell you a story. It's a wonderful story. It's an old, ancient story. I'll paraphrase it. There was a hunter who lived in India, and he would go to Africa every 2 years, and he would bring back animals and prizes and things like that. Well, one year he took off and he went to the jungle, and he discovered this large enclave inside the jungle, and it was filled with beautiful parrots, beautiful birds, multicolored, and they all talked, and he couldn't get over it. And he put a net out over one of the trees, and he captured one of the parrots. And he put the parrot in a cage. And he brought the parrot back to be with him in India as his pet. And he fed the parrot sunflower seeds, and he fed him rice, and he took wonderful care of him. He was very good, kept him in the cage. 2 years went by, and he talked to the parrot every day. And he said to the parrot, I'm now going back to Africa. Is there anything you would like me to say to your friends back there in the jungle when I'm back there? The parrot said, yes. Tell them that I'm very happy in my cage. Tell them that I am joyful and that I love being in my cage here with you. Just tell them that. The hunter went back to Africa. He went back to the place in the jungle where he had been 2 years before. And he told the story. He said, your friend that I took back has a message for you. And the message is that he is happy in his cage, that he is joyful with me, and that he has no regrets. At the instant of hearing that, a bird on one of the branches keeled over and dropped dead. Dropped dead, stiff. The hunter assumed that he was just filled with sorrow at hearing of what had happened to his friend. So he went back to India, and he told his parrot what had happened. He said, I went back and I did just as you said. And I told them all out there, and at the moment that I told it, apparently one of the parrots was so upset that he'd missed you so much that he just dropped dead. And at the instant that that happened, the parrot in the cage keeled over, dead. His legs went straight up in the air, and he went stiff. The hunter was beside himself. He couldn't figure out how could this happen. And he took the dead parrot out of the cage, opened it up, and threw it out on the woodpile. The instant that the parrot landed on the woodpile, he flew up to the branch. And the hunter said, you tricked me. What is this? I thought you were dead. And the parrot said, my friend was sending me a message. He told me, by his actions, that in order for you to escape from your cage, you must die while you're alive. Okay, now that's an old story. That's an ancient story that's been told over the years. What does it mean? I mean, don't you see that this is a cage? That the whole planet is a cage? If you can just stand back far enough and see that we're still restricted by the limitations placed on us as human beings. We're stuck here, or maybe in our homes, or in wherever we are. We're all in cages. And even though we have more room to manipulate, we may even have a whole planet, we're still sort of in cages. Now, how do you escape from the cage that you're in? You have to die while you're alive. You have to literally experience your own death. All of us have to. All of us are going to die. So why not experience it in advance? And see yourself out of your body, gone, but able to look back at what's going on now. Just like the dream, where you have the dream and you have everything you want, but you're able to look back at it. As you do that, you begin to see the folly, the absurdity of hanging on to anything, of being attached to anything, of needing anything, of telling yourself that I can't be happy if, from the perspective of having died, but being able to look back on it just like the dream. As soon as you can do that, as soon as you can experience yourself formless, dimensionless, form and all of the attendant things that you hang on to become irrelevant. They're not necessary any longer. You have a whole new way of living, a new way of being. I had this really stunning realization one day when I was running, and I saw someone about 30 yards ahead of me who was running. And I was thinking about this concept of the unified life and that we're all one, and seeing the big picture and seeing ourselves as all connected and that we all come from a oneness. And because we're so stuck on our separateness, and I was looking at this runner some yards ahead of me, thinking, how could it be that I am connected to that person? I don't know him. I don't know his name. I don't know anything about him. How could there be any connection between us? It was like this thing dawned on me that I am already an I that is we. In other words, I have many different life forms on me. In my eyelids, I have thousands of bacteria. In my pancreas, in my ears, and all over me, I have like thousands of these different life forms. And yet I think of myself as a singular unit, but I am made up of a lot of life, a lot of stuff that is alive. So if you can get back far enough, again, it's always a question of perspective. If you could leave Earth plane, and you can only do that in thought, and look down and try to see humanity, you would really see one body. I mean, if you could get away far enough, you would see, and it would look, as you get closer and closer and closer, just like as you get closer and closer with a microscope, into a raindrop. A raindrop looks like a raindrop until you start examining it closer and closer and closer, and then you see whole universes within one section of it that have never even had any contact with the other section of it. And so, well, that's the perspective you have to get on us all being connected. We only see it from this very tiny perspective. Now, how you can apply this in your life is just to remind yourself that just because there's a distance between you and somebody else doesn't mean that there's not a connection. That's the beauty of thought again. It wasn't, an hour ago that someone here at the studio said something to me about her father. And I said to her, well, get me your father's address and I'll send him a copy of one of my books. And she said, oh, he would really like that. And then she started talking about her aunt. And she was doing like a little imitation, and it was really funny. And she said, "Oh, my aunt just loves you." And she lives down in Florida. She said, "She loves you." And I said, "Well, get me her address, and I'll send her one too. I'd be happy to." And she didn't say anything at that moment. But then as she came to go to lunch with us, she said, "You're not going to believe this, but my father called right after I talked to you, and he gave me my aunt's address, which I didn't have before." And she said, "Isn't that a coincidence?" And I said, "That isn't any more of a coincidence than that we've been talking about this very thing right here for the last several hours here in the studio in Chicago today. That there is a connection, and that you'll see it when you believe it. And all I suggest to you is that you try it. If you pull into a gas station and somebody is right up ahead of you, and they're parked in a place where you think you should be, and if they were only up at the pump a little further away, then you would be able to be happy and they would be able to be happy. Don't tell yourself that. See them as being exactly where they are, that you're connected to them, and treat them that way, so that you don't treat them with anger. You accept it. It's always acceptance. It's openness and acceptance. What you do is you just pull up in front of them and back your car up a little bit and use that pump. Don't treat that person as if they were separate from you. Treat them as if they were a part of you, because they are. It's just that you can't see the perspective. You will be able to see that perspective. You'll get that when you leave this form that you're so attached to and go into another dimension. You'll see all of humanity as one. You are one of the pieces of this puzzle called humanity. And if you are missing from it, or if you're incomplete, or if you're not in harmony, then you make all of humanity incomplete. And that's exactly how important you are as a person. And if you just start thinking like that, that everybody out there that you run into is somehow, in some way, connected to you, you stop being antagonistic toward them, because you know that if you got antagonistic toward the microbes that live inside the lining of your large intestine and just didn't want them there and said, "Oh, I'm going to do everything I can to get them out of there," that would kill you. You literally need that life, that I, that is we, the self-contained unit that is comprised of all of life. You have to have all of that. It's equally true on a different level for all of humanity. And you start seeing everybody like that. And before long, you'll start seeing the connections. They'll start being there, but only when you believe it.
Do you know your past? Do you know where it is? It's only where you think. Do you know that every relationship you have, close your eyes, just close your eyes. Just close them. Okay, where's your husband? Where's your wife? Where are your children, your grandchildren? Where's your ex-spouse? They're all in your mind. Open your eyes. Now they're gone. Close your eyes. There they are again. They're just in your mind. You carry your relationships around in your mind. And if your thoughts about your relationships are on what is wrong, what you don't like, what you hate, what they did to you, that will be your experience. And you will materialize or manifest more and more of that pain into your life. If you look at what you love about them and make that the focus of your attention, that will be the nature of your relationship. It's the greatest secret in making any relationship work. It's so simple. Always focus on what you love, if you want that to expand in your life. When you look at someone that you're in a relationship with, look at what you love, because what you think about is what expands. I'll be talking about that a little bit later on, about not giving energy to the things you don't want, because what you think about is what expands. And if what you're thinking about what you don't want, then more of what you don't want will just keep showing up. It's the only way it works. So now I'd suggest to everybody in this room and everybody listening that you take an eraser to all of the wounds of your past and you just send them away. And don't make them your calling card anymore. And bring the presence of God to those problems. And the presence of God is nothing more than a higher, faster energy. It's all energy. Everything is energy. As Einstein said, nothing happens until something moves. And spiritual energy is just energy that moves very fast and at very high frequencies. And problematic energy is very slow and very low frequencies. And when high, fast frequencies are put in the face of low, slow energies, they are nullified. They dissipate. They can't survive. There's a song that they sing at a lot of the churches that I speak in. It says, Surely the presence of God is in this place. It's a great affirmation. Anytime, or the affirmation from A Course in Miracles, I can choose peace rather than this. But surely the presence of God is in this place. Every time that I have a conflict with one of my children or with any place, I just bring that line to bear on what is I am experiencing right now. I just bring that line to bear. Surely the presence. Because there's no place that God is not. As the little child in India in the 7th century, who was an avatar, who was really God in a human form, and everywhere he would go, people would be healed just by being in his presence, just like St. Francis. He'd be seen in the village, he'd be seen in the valley at the same time. Lights would emanate from his body wherever he would go, and everyone in the village knew that this was a child of God. This was God in their village without the benefit of an ego. This was an egoless being who had shown up in their village, which is what I believe our great spiritual teachers were. Like, there's ways to reach highest levels of consciousness. One of them is to take on an ego and then spend a big hunk of your life seeing if you can shed as much of it as you can. Which has been my path. But there's another one where you just show up and you never take on an ego in the first place. There's only been a handful of those in recorded history. And this little child was one of them. And the elders in the tribe knew that this was God in a human form. And they went up to the little boy and they said to him, trying to bribe him, "I'll give you an orange," they said, "if you can tell me where God is." And the little boy, without hesitating, said, "I'll give you 2 oranges if you can tell me where God isn't." It's one of the very fundamental precepts of this entire program, is that there's only one power in the universe, and that is the power of God. And that whenever we see evil, it's nothing more than love going in the wrong direction, away from its source. And all we have to do is figure out a way to get it to turn around and start returning to its source. Because there's only one power in the universe. And every time we think that we are in something that isn't good, like a problem, like disorder, disharmony, disease, discomfort, what we've done is we've used our mind to create a separation from God. And as long as we are moving away from that source, from that spirit, as long as we're moving opposite of that, those problems continue to manifest. But if we can somehow figure out a way to turn around and move back in that direction, we can eliminate it.
Inspiration responds to our attentiveness in various and sometimes unexpected ways. For example, when I began writing this book, I debated between the 2 titles, Inspiration, Your Ultimate Destiny, or Inspiration, Your Ultimate Calling. One day, while I was swimming in the ocean, I was going back and forth in my mind, trying out both titles. Still uncertain, when I'd finished my swim, I called Reed Tracy, who's the president and CEO of my publishing company at Hay House, from a payphone to get his opinion about the title. While I waited for him to answer, the word calling appeared on the miniature screen of the telephone. Nothing else, just calling. And then the word began to flash on and off as if it were trying to get my attention. When Reed answered, I told him what had just occurred, and we both agreed on Inspiration, Your Ultimate Calling, for the title of this book and this program. All of this may appear to be nothing more than a silly coincidence, but I know better. I think of the word inspiration as meaning being in spirit. When we're in spirit, we're inspired. And when we're inspired, it's because we're back in spirit, fully awake to spirit within us. Being inspired is an experience of joy. We feel completely connected to our source and totally on purpose. Our creative juices flow, and we bring exceptionally high energy to our daily life. We're not judging others or ourselves. We're uncritical and unbothered by behaviors or attitudes that, in uninspired moments, are frustrating.
Our heart sings in appreciation for every breath, and we're tolerant, joyful, and loving. Being in spirit isn't necessarily restricted to the work we do or the activities of our daily life. We can be inspired and at the same time be unsure of what vocation to pursue or what activities we want to schedule. Inspiration is a simple recognition of spirit within ourselves. It's a return to that invisible, formless field from which all things emanate, a field of energy that I call intention in my previous book, The Power of Intention. My experience with being in spirit. When I'm in spirit, I have a feeling of contentment, but more than this, I experience joy. I'm able to receive the vibrational energies of my source, call them voices or messages or silent reminders, even invisible suggestions or what have you, but they're vibrations of energy that I'm able to align with as I get myself out of the way. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, one of the world's great geniuses, once remarked, quote, "When I am, as it were, completely myself, entirely alone and of good cheer, say traveling in a carriage or walking after a good meal or during the night when I cannot sleep, it is on such occasions that my ideas flow best and most abundantly. Whence and how they come, I know not, nor can I foresee them." End of quote. We don't have to be a genius to know what Mozart speaks of. The same force in a different way is flowing through you and me right now. I've learned to remove resistance to the free flow of this spiritual energy by reminding myself to align with it, or to be in spirit in my thoughts and my expectations. When I sit down to write, my desire is to invite spirit to express through me, and I encourage ideas to flow freely. Like Mozart, I'm connected as if it were to my source in spirit, thinking and expecting to be the instrument of my spiritual source. Ideas flow, and whatever assistance I need just shows up. And, like Mozart, I can't describe how the ideas come, and I can't force them. Staying in spirit seems to be the secret to this feeling of being inspired. I also find that inspiration flows in other areas of my life when my primary mission is like what Michael Berg so beautifully describes in Becoming Like God, Kabbalah, and Our Ultimate Destiny. Quote, "Just as every being is God's business, every being becomes our business as well." Unquote. That is, being inspired necessitates the willingness to suspend ego and enter a space where I want to share who I am and what I have in a completely unlimited fashion.
When you feel inspired, everything works. The reason that everything works is because you have left the material, the physical world, the world of the ego, and you've moved into the world of spirit. And when you move into the world of spirit, into that invisible world, you get connected. And inspiration means inspired. And Patanjali said, when you are inspired by some great purpose, some extraordinary project, all your thoughts break their bonds. Your mind transcends limitations. Your consciousness expands in every direction. And you find yourself in a new and great and wonderful world. Dormant forces, faculties, and talents come alive. And you discover yourself to be a greater person by far than you ever dreamed yourself to be. There's some very important wisdom in that. This idea of finding yourself inspired means that you allow these dormant forces, these things that are in every single one of us, to come alive. Consciousness begins to expand. Things begin to show up in your life. You begin to manage the coincidences of your life.
What goes around truly does come around. The more you give away and do everything that you do in the service of others, the more that seems to come back. The cycle of real magic takes root. This lesson of prosperity applies to all fields of endeavor. When I was boarding an airplane early one time, I overheard the sarcastic voice of a flight attendant saying, "Here come the animals." I knew it was only a matter of time until that organization perished from a scarcity of passengers. Sure enough, they've gone into bankruptcy. Employees need to know in their souls that they are privileged to serve those who are willing to give of their income to use the service. But I'm not talking to an organization, I'm talking to you. You can shift your consciousness all you want, but you must also shift the emphasis of what you do from results to purpose. Try it. Shift for a 1-month period of time and see if miracles don't start showing up in your life. The less you need to force this new way of being on yourself, the easier it becomes to let it be the guiding principle of your life. It is about allowing your natural self to flow peacefully and knowing your bliss comes from giving and not getting. Letting yourself just flow is a concept you will want to become quite familiar with as you begin to allow the prosperity that you desire in your life. Earlier in this tape, I discussed how everything seems to work perfectly in our lives when we are inspired. Flow is that kind of an inspiration, one so powerful that all obstacles seem to be removed, and we are in love with what we are doing so much that it seems to just flow without any effort from us at all. Getting to flow in your life means achieving a state of concentration so total that everything else becomes non-existent. People who experience prosperity in their lives know how to achieve this magnificent state, wherein their activities, instead of being a tedious set of chores to finish, become more like a meditation, only they are active and involved rather than sitting quietly. Getting to this zone, you are literally watching your body do things that are incredible. You are experiencing magnificent joy or bliss, and nothing can get in your way. You are on purpose, and you are having that peak experience that others can only dream about. There is a way to get to this state of flow. These are not only the secrets to becoming a superachiever in the workplace, they are the secrets for producing genuine miracles in your life. This process includes 1. Having an overriding spiritual goal that gives meaning to your work. Making your work a meditative experience, and instead of seeing yourself as doing a particular task, you actually in your mind become the task. You shift from a human doing to a human being, if you will. There is no separation. You and the task are unified, all in the name of that overriding spiritual objective to give of yourself in a purposeful way. 2. Focus and close your mind to all distractions. You can train your mind to focus, and this is why I've been encouraging you to learn to meditate. Give your mind the same mental training that you give your body when you want your body to be in a maximum physical condition. You need not be a slave to your senses. Focusing is your natural knowing within. You can either ignore it or go there often. 3. Surrender to the process. You must resist your impulse to strive for what you want. Surrender to God or your higher power, or however you choose to spell it. You must let go and surrender to the actual process. Forget about the result and put your mind and your physical body totally into the experience at hand. This is not that difficult to achieve. Don't strain to achieve. Instead, enjoy the process of the work that you are doing. The results will come independent of your striving for them. 4. Experience the ecstasy. This is the automatic result that will flow to you from the above guidelines. You will know a kind of inner beatitude and bliss that will be unmistakable. It will sneak up on you and hit you over the head, so to speak, but nevertheless, you will know that glorious emotional peak experience if you get yourself to flow in your life. The ecstasy is its own miracle. 5. Watch as you see yourself reaching peak productivity without striving. Your state of ecstasy opens up new vistas of creativity and energy. This natural state of bliss is the key to improving your performance. This is the state that superachievers are able to create for themselves. The processes of surrendering, focusing, and living at purpose lead to ecstasy. When you feel that inner bliss, you simply want more and more of it. The more of it that you are able to create for yourself, the more productive you become. Your thoughts create all of this ecstasy, and ultimately all of the miracles that are going to come into your life in the form of increased prosperity. Your mind is very powerful in terms of what it can produce in your physical reality, as well as the physical reality beyond your own borders. You are now on a path of working toward reversing scarcity consciousness to one of prosperity. This is largely a mental game. You must convince yourself that you and only you are responsible for the pictures in your mind. You must know how very powerful your picturing process is in creating the material world that you experience. This is a universal principle. This is a vital, alive factor of the universe that you are a part of and that is also a part of you. What you can conceive of as a picture in your mind, you can create in the physical world, provided you do not let go of the picture. My wife Marcy and I are currently having our children take lessons from acknowledged masters in the art of meditating and learning to trust one's inner vision. We do this not to give them an advantage over others, but for the purpose of their knowing that they have something within them that no one can ever take away from them, regardless of the material circumstances of their lives. They are learning very early that their peace and tranquility as human beings is dependent upon themselves, and that they have a special retreat within that is always available to them.
The way to get to this place of inner peace and consequently to experience higher awareness is to shut down the internal frenzy. The Chinese sage Seng Chan Tsen gave us the following piece of wisdom. Stop talking, stop thinking, and there is nothing you will not understand. Return to the root and you will find meaning. Look inward, and in a flash you will conquer the apparent and the void. He is counseling us to simply stop talking and stop thinking. This is the third key to the sense of peacefulness that is a part of the way of the sacred quest. I want to make it clear that peace is not the absence of conflict. Peace is the experience of the presence of God. As you learn to shut down your inner dialogue and become more peaceful, you will begin to know the presence of God in your life. That presence will be felt in both your body and your inner world. Beliefs are removed. Belief is replaced with knowing. At different times in my past, both alcohol and other substances were a part of my own life path. Through meditation, I was able to leave alcohol behind, and I have never touched it since. But with other substances, I believed I could use them when I chose to for an energizing effect beyond anything I had ever experienced. I was able to use them, enjoy increased energy, and leave them alone for long periods of time. But a time came when I knew I was making foolish and non-spiritual choices connected with seeking out these insidious substances. My personal challenge became to rid myself of these insidious habits. I tried reading my way out of it, but I went back. I tried acupuncture, discussions with experts, and herbal cures, but I went back. I was determined that I would no longer play around with any substance, but I went back. Then I had what I call a holy instant, which was for me a divine experience. At 4:05 a.m. on a January morning, I was meditating. In the still quiet of that meditation, the thought of never again using a substance became real. It was my first absolutely direct experience of God. My entire inner screen of awareness became a bright luminescence as I heard a voice say, "You've tried everything else. Why not try me?" I have never in my life known such peace and certainty that God was with me and around me. I felt overwhelmed by the bliss I experienced. I listened to that voice, felt the presence of God, and have not since experienced the slightest desire to go back to any substance. I have debated with myself about putting this very personal story on this tape. That is, my ego self debated with my higher self. But I knew my experience with chemical substances involved helping others to look within, instead of outside of themselves, for both the excitement and the peace their higher self has for them. If, in my telling this story, one person who experiments with any substance and knows that it is out of control decides to shut down the inner turmoil and seek the help of their loving presence, then it will have been worth it. You needn't have the challenge of getting off drugs to find value applying this third key to higher awareness. It works the same way for every experience you are ready to transcend. Getting to silence and then having God be your personal knowing presence. Getting to silence requires conscious effort on your part. When going within, use the metaphor of the pebble dropping through the various levels of your mind. While the pebble drops, be the witness. Observe compassionately all your chatter and thoughts as you descend to the unified field. When you notice your mind overly crowded with thoughts, practice not focusing on anything just for a few moments. Tell yourself, "My mind is full of the disturbance of chatter and thoughts. I'm going to try to spend 5 minutes without any thoughts bombarding me. I'll dismiss every thought just for a few moments." Use your breath as a means to keep your mind from chattering away ceaselessly. You can do this by focusing your compassionate witness on your breathing. Breathe in deeply, excluding any thoughts as you concentrate on the in-breath. Then exhale slowly and fully with the same concentration. When thoughts appear, as they will, know that they are signaling you to return to mindfulness of your breathing in and out. Your heartbeat can also be used as a focal point for the witness. Return to the steady, rhythmic beat of your heart when you notice thoughts intruding. When you find your thoughts just below the surface in the analyzing level, think of a rose. As you replace the analyzing with the beauty of a rose, you might want to recall this verse by the poet Rabindranath Tagore. "Do not carry a rose to our beloved, because in it is already embodied a message which, unlike our language of words, cannot be analyzed." That is, remember that the habit of analyzing or picking things apart in a judging fashion keeps you from knowing the truth that is at the center of your being. The rose needs no analyzing, as the poet reminds us. It simply is.
the same is true of you. At the synthesizing level, when you are feeling the beauty and unity of life, you may discover that you are entering thoughts of pleasure about enjoying this spiritual space. Let go of those thoughts too. The ego enjoys convincing you that you are better than others because you are more spiritual or have deeper understanding. It swims through your consciousness with thoughts like those. When it does, gently send it elsewhere for this time of meditation or prayer.
I've always kind of believed that when you come into this world with big dharma, and I obviously have, then what accompanies that is big challenges, big obstacles, big difficulties. Many of you know I spent the first 9 years of my life in a series of foster homes and orphanages. I don't look back on that as anything other than a great opportunity for me to learn self-reliance as a young boy, and then consequently teach people about self-reliance, which is what I've been doing for 35 years or so, with 30-some books and programs of all sorts and so on. It isn't to say that those 9 years weren't filled with some heartaches and some sadnesses and missing your mommy and things like that. But my mom, who is almost 94 now, in a hospital tonight, having a pacemaker put in on Tuesday. At that age, that's a challenging thing as well. I've been through a lot of the kinds of struggles. I mean, we had nothing when I was younger. Everything I have is what I earned. I look upon that as a great advantage. But it was just the Dharma that I chose, I guess. I've been through divorce twice. I know what that feels like. I know the heartache of breakups and have lived with them and struggled with them and have used it to help me to become a better person, a more compassionate, kinder person who listens more than he talks. I've been through the addiction route in my life and struggled with it on many different levels. From alcohol, which I can proudly now say it's been 22 years since it's crossed into my body. Yeah, thank you. But the previous 22 years, I drank enough to make sure that these 22 years were covered. So, and not just alcohol, but drugs as well. I've been down that road and know what it feels like and know the struggle of it and the pain of it.
But Elizabeth Kubler-Ross said, if you shield the mountain from the windstorms, you'll never see the beauty of the carvings. So the storms of our life, if we try to shield ourselves from the storms of our lives, we don't get to see the beauty of the carvings of what those storms bring for us. And virtually every spiritual advance, not virtually, every spiritual advance that you make in your life, that I've made in my life, has been preceded by a fall of some kind or another. I always give the example of when I was in high school, I was on the track team, and I was the high jumper on the track team, among other things. And the bar would be up here, and we get back here, and you run up to this is a metaphor for what I'm speaking about, and you run up to the bar, and you run up and get down as low as you can, as fast as you can, and in the process of getting down low, it would allow you to propel yourself over the bar. So the low points of our life are the times when we should be in a state of gratitude, as hard as that is for us to do, but that's what an enlightened being does. Is they begin to see that, these low points in our life. Now, I've been through some low points in my life, very dramatic low points. When my wife and I separated 12 years ago, I mean, it was the closest thing that I could call it to a depression for months and months. And out of that depression and out of that deep hurt and sadness about breaking up our family, in a sense, because we're not really broken up, but I was able to write The Power of Intention, which is the next book after Erroneous Zones that just soared and just took off and sells in the millions all around the planet. And it came from a place of compassion. That it's when you are in those low points that
you have a tendency to reach out to other people with more compassion and more love and more understanding because of what you're going through yourself. So that, I think, and this is true, I could give 1,000 examples of that, but the whole idea of it is that these low points, the struggles that we go through in our lives are really significant things, and look back at them, and you can do an awful lot of growing from them. So that when you bring higher energy to the presence of lower and slower energy that we call evil, energy that we call disease, energy that we call depression, you are not only sending the disease and the depression and the despair away, you are converting that very energy into the higher and the faster energy that is being brought to its presence. The same thing is true of hatred. When you bring love to the presence of hatred, hatred not only dissolves, but it turns to love. All you have to do is light a candle, turn on a light, and the darkness dissolves. The darkness disappears. But more than that, and this is really crucial for what I'm presenting here this afternoon, the darkness is converted to light.